Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ultimate Power Tool Workbench series. Whew. Today we're going to get building the frame and insert some panels and just see how far we get really. So let's go. So one thing that I really stress at the start of every project is to mark everything up extremely clearly and also orientate the faces so that I've got nice grain showing. Obviously, this is only a workshop project, so do you really need the nice grain showing? Not really. But at the same time, I'm going to be looking at it quite a lot, and seeing as I'm using solid wood and some of it looks pretty nice, I might as well orientate it so those faces are facing outwards. So to start with, we're going to label everything up and then start making some noise. So firstly, the legs. Let's get all of these laid out and see what sort of stuff we've got going on here. You can already see that we've got one board here that's slightly yellower than the other two here. So that one can probably be grouped there. That one's kind of a medium. Okay, we've got four here that are slightly yellower and the grain is a little bit wider on them as well. It's not quite as tight as the ones over here. So these ones, that one looks a bit dodgy actually, is there a better one? That one will do. There we go. So these ones here will be on the back side of the workbench, the edge that I won't be seeing as often. These ones will all be on the front face and they'll also be the middle leg on the ends as well. So, as I said in a previous episode, this table can be broken down into three parts. The left cabinet, the right cabinet, and the torsion box on top. To make construction of these bottom cabinets easier, they can also be broken down into four frames. Frame A, Frame B, Frame C, and Frame D. These are jointed, pre-sanded and glued together first. Then I can simply shove a stretcher between Frame A and B and Frame C and D, and voila, there are my cabinet frames. This makes the glue up far less stressful by breaking it down into smaller tasks, and it also requires less clamps. So now we need to work out what the components for the table supports will be. Now these ones don't matter too much because they're hardly going to be seen. In this batch of 6 supports, I've also included the side stretchers as well for the ends of the workbench, and obviously I will be seeing those. So we need to pick the prettiest 2 out of all of these bits, preferably something that matches the legs. Not that bit because that is very orange. I think it's going to be the first 2 we picked out, these ones here. So these will be the side stretchers, these will be the table supports. So we've got 4 legs showing on the front and back, so we're going to pick out 4 of these and then pick which face we want facing forward. Okay, so this will be the 4 front legs, and what I tend to do is notice how the grain's thinner here and then it gets a little bit wider towards the center. I want to make that so that it's thinner on the outside of each of the frames and then it gets fatter to the inside. This is something that I did on the front of this workbench. In fact, I'll show you. You see how here the grain is narrow and then it gets wider on the top as well. Grain is narrow at the top and then gets wider. And then on the leg vise, same thing, narrow here, gets wider towards the center, and then the bottom stretcher, I've just got this really cool bit of crown figure going on there. Same thing with the sliding dead man actually. That's usually parked over here, so which means that the fatter grain is on the inside. I don't know, I think it just makes a little bit of a difference in the overall look, especially on these corners. It kind of just follows around nicely. So I want to continue that on this Power Tool Workbench too. So I think that's a nice old match we've got there. So we're going to label this front, and this is going to be frame A. This will be front frame B. Frame C, D. Then I'll get the back legs from over here and we'll put those behind the frames for the front, and then that will be the back of frame A. Now here, I've got a little bit of yellow grain going on here. Don't want that showing on that edge because that will be seen on the end of the workbench. So having the yellow on the inside will be hidden. So that will go like that, and then we'll get another one from the back. So here, wider grain is in the center. So we'll put it down like that. That will be the back of frame B. These ones, let's see, we've got a bit of yellow grain there and it gets wider as well towards the center. So back of frame C, and this one here, something like that. back of frame D. Then one by one I'll flip these over so as not to get confused. This will be back A, put that back around that way, back B, C, D. Then these will be the sides, so these will be part of frame A and D. And for these we just want to look for the nicest edge face because that's going to be the one that shows. So for this one it's probably going to be that one there, and this one it's, let's see, it's got a bit of yellow sappiness on there, so that can be there. So that could be side A and side D. And moving back to the top table supports, the top support on B and C will not be seen, but then the side of A and D will be seen. So we need to pick a nice edge that will be seen on the outside. There you go, and it looks to be these two here. So those will be seen on the outside faces, and then these ones will be part of B and C, and those are hidden under the top. Let's call this one frame D, and this can be the top, and this one can be frame A, and this is the top. To get the best grain continuity along the side of the table, I cut the long stretches for frame A and D to the entire width of the table. Then I could cut out a section to fit a leg and it will look like the grain flows straight through it. Right, they're all cut up, so I also did the stretcher as well for the lower half, seeing as I was cutting the table support to exactly the same lengths. So now, I'm going to group it all into the respective frames and we'll get joining it together. So what have we got here? Stretcher A. Okay, so frame A components, frame B components C and D, and then these are the front stretchers. We won't need to do those just yet though. So it's all grouped up quite nicely, and we're going to start with the middle two because those are obviously the easiest. There's less components to them. So to join all of these together, we're going to be using the holy grail of wood joining technology, the Festool Domino. So the Festool Domino is something that I used loads at Wood. We got taught how to do things the traditional way, but of course you need to learn how to do things the modern way as well. This basically makes mortise and tenons in a few seconds and has completely revolutionised the way that cabinet making is done nowadays. So Festool were kind enough to sponsor this to the channel, and if you watch my videos long enough you'll know that I'm completely open about the facts that I work with sponsors and affiliates. So if you want to know a little bit more about the different companies I work with, have a look in the description. There'll be a link to a disclaimer and it will explain the different ways that I work with different companies and how I'm working with them in order to retain my integrity and not become a sellout, essentially. So have a quick read, it'll take you 5 minutes. Let's get back into the fun stuff. So what this tool does is it inserts these oval shaped wooden dowels. These are made of solid beech and come in various sizes. Now the ones I'm using for this will be the 8x40 dominoes. And in order to accommodate the different sizes of dominoes, you get various cutters. Now these are sold separately to the actual machine. I got a big box of different sized dominoes, this one here, and it included these cutters in there as well. So it's well worth getting that with the basic. So it's well worth getting that with the basic domino, just so you've got a selection off the bat rather than being stuck with one size. It's supplied with a 5mm cutter. To replace that, you put a wrench in a little tab here, pull it up, that separates it from the machine. Then you've got a spindle lock on the side here, push that in, that locks the cutter. This is basically a router cutter, and what it does is when it plunges, it sort of does this oscillating motion with it in order to cut the oval shaped hole. So that's just on a little thread. Replace the cutter, give it a little tweak, and then put the machine back together. Done. So when I place the dominoes in the end of the components, I need to be careful about where I place that in relation to the top and bottom face. Not necessarily for this component, but for this one here. If I quickly show you how this goes together, like I said, this is a scrap bit, so it's not going to affect anything. We'll put one in there and one in there. So you just got to draw a line across both of the components and then spin it round. So that's the face that we're going to be plunging into. And because what we're putting in here is an 8x40 dowel, we want to change the stop to be 20 millimeters. That's half of 40. Of course, you can offset this, so you could have 15 plunging in one side and then 25 in the other if you wanted. It's entirely up to you, but I'm going to go in an equal amount on both faces. And then in order to set the height of it, we've got an adjustable bed here that can be locked down, and you've got some preset stops on the side here. So this is a 40 millimeter component. If I set that to 40 mil and then plunge down the bed to hit that stop, lock it down over here, that will be slap bang in the center of this 40 millimeter component. So what I want to check here is that the height of the domino isn't too close to the top here, because if I plunge a hole in here, what I've got above it is quite a lot of short grain like that, and if there is any shearing action of that domino, I'm worried it's going to pop that end grain off. I'm pretty sure if I put it in the center of the 40 millimeter component, there will be enough meat above it here to keep it in place. But I'm just going to test it just to be sure. And so the only final adjustment we've got to do now is how tight you want the domino to be. So this is a perfect fit around the size of the domino, slightly larger, slightly larger. Depends if you want any lateral movement with it, similar to what you'd get with a biscuit jointer. For this, I'm just going to go for the tightest setting. One will go in like that. So there you go, holds it together lovely, and with a bit of glue that will be rock solid. What I wanted to test, sweet, okay, so I was worried that if this was to bend down it would pop off the end grain on the top of this, but it seems like we've got them far down enough that something like that isn't going to happen. Brilliant. So to begin with, let's get frame A laid out. So there is frame A laid out. So this will be the area where all of the timber and stuff will be stored. I'll have that sort of grid work in there for all my offcuts. And this will be a flat panel in here that'll have some really shallow shelving on it, and then you'll be able to get access from this side in order to get to the power tool storage and things. So with it all laid out like this, the best thing to do at this point is leave it like that. And when you want to join a certain corner, you take those two components, keep them in the same orientation that you picked them up in, so like this, and then clamp them in the vise so that you know that that is the way they need to go. If you start moving them around in your hands and things and flipping them over, then you're going to lose track and eventually you're going to join something on the wrong edge. Unfortunately with a domino, it isn't very easy to hide your mistake if you get it wrong. So on these I'm going to go in about 25 millimeters in from the edge, and that gives me enough material on the sides as well. So there you go, it'll be something like that. That should be enough material on the side in order to support the dominoes. Now at the end of the series, plans will be available for this workbench, and if you're building it alongside me, you'll know that the table supports a 35 millimeters thick as opposed to 40 like the rest of the frame. This means with the domino set to a 40 millimeter thick component, it's going to space the dominoes closer to the bottom on these table supports. It's not an issue at all. The reason this is slightly thinner is to give clearance to the top dog hole on the front legs of the workbench. And as for the bottom stretcher here, this is the bottom of the leg. This needs to be spaced up 100 millimeters. So we're going to flip the component round, keeping it all stuck together so that I make sure I keep that same reference face. So I know it's going to be joining there. Then I'm going to do 100 millimeters from the bottom of the leg. Square that line across to the inside face. So that is where the bottom of this stretcher needs to go. And then same again, going to measure in 25 millimeters from either side on this stretcher. And now if I line up the stretcher with that line, that'll be where the bottom of the stretcher is. Then I can just transfer the marks from the stretcher onto the leg. There we go. So there you go, that is the two types of joint that we'll be using. So you're either using the side grain as a reference or the end grain as a reference. So now it's pretty much repeating that around the entire frame. So the frames are all together, and now we need to add the stretchers along the fronts and backs of all of these sections. So I don't know why I put them down, because I need to work out which face is prettiest. And that one looks quite nice, and then we'll do that one there, and then these bits, that one, and that one, that could be the back, and that one could be the back, and these could be the front too. Nice and easy. And then these ones I'm going to do so the wider grain is closer to the floor. So it's kind of opposite compared to everything we did before, where this was going like towards the inside of the frame. Now the inside of the frame is going to be above on this thin side, and then the thick stuff is going to be closer to the floor. For some reason in my mind, that I think will look better. I think it will just sort of look upside down if I do it this way up, where it's tapering up like that. So this one will be front stretcher. This side is frame A, and this side is frame B. And the back stretcher, this side is going to be A, and this side is going to be B. And then on this side, I've got a small split on the end here, so we'll make that, oh blimey, that's actually quite a big one. We'll make that the inside face, so you can't see that. And this will be C, D, C, D. Done. You know what, it looks big, but that is actually the perfect size. I can shift it this way a little bit, and then I've got loads of room for my machines that will be over there eventually. Speaking of machines that will be here, the next job that needs to be done is a little bit of routing. I need to put some rebates in order to accommodate some of the panels that will go in some of these frames. My problem, the router table is there, all boxed up. It's literally just been delivered. So that's probably going to take me the rest of the day to get that built and all set up with the router in there. So this episode is going to end here, and then we'll attack the panels in the next episode. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or the series so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you've got any questions, chuck them in the comments below, and if you want to support the channel, you can find my Patreon link in the description below. I would be hugely appreciative of that. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video.